Hi everyone. I have got a piece of Mako Stoneware bisque. This is 04, and what I'm going to do is a watercolor background to start with, and I'm going to do that with the CS 657 Jade. So the color strokes have some pigment, some glaze, and a touch of clay in them. So I'm going to create a wash by just putting some water in one of my wells. And I'm going to dampen my brush, and I'm going to use, this is the medium Sumi brush. So anytime you're making a wash, you want to start with water and add the color to it. So I'm just going to give myself a healthy scoop of that jade color and one more. And I'm mixing it in. Make sure you get it all off your brush. Remember, the color is heavier than water, so it will fall to the bottom, so you need to constantly keep that stirred up as you're working with it. Okay? Because this is stoneware, we don't want to be on the bottom of the foot. You could wax the foot also if you wanted to do that. Okay? So I'm just going to start over here, and I'm doing what I call my slip, slap, mush, mush, and I'm just kind of bouncing around, but I'm not constantly stir when you pick up more color. I'm not lifting the brush off of the piece. I'm just kind of bouncing it. If you lift it off, what you're going to do is you're going to create what I call rabbit tracks. So you would have it like this, and you've got a pattern. But if you just continually bounce it around, it just kind of blends it together and looks more like a watercolor effect. Constantly stir that up. And because this is a round piece, I'm going to try not to let it drip and run down one of the sides. Just constantly stirring that and kind of mushing it and turning in different directions so that you don't have that pattern. So I'm running out, so I'm going to add more water. And get 2 scoops of color. It's always a good idea to try to, pay attention to how much product you're putting in there, or make up enough that you don't have to, depending on the area that you're trying to cover, that you don't have to mix up a second batch of it, just in case it would be different. The Sumi brushes are really soft. You can find those on the Colors for Earth website. We have a large, medium, small, and a mini, and then we have a set. I'm going to go ahead and put this on the handle, even though I'll probably put a different color or a design on there, but that way everything matches. And if I had dripped any color on it, then that'll solve that problem. Okay. If you find that you have an area, like say you don't like this darker area, you can come back with just water in your brush and you can soften that and move it around. That's always a possibility. Because there's a little bit of glaze in this product, one reason you don't want to put it on the foot of the piece, but it also allows more open time so that you can manipulate it and move it. If you don't have the color stroke and you only have the color concentrates, you can make this type of product by taking the CSP01 gloss medium, and you could mix it with a color. So like this is CC 150 light cerulean. You could mix it with that if you wanted to, 50-50, and then create a wash out of it. It would do the same thing because you're adding enough glaze. I like to take the little hairs. If I see a hair that's come off my brush, I like to take those and just roll them out with my finger just to make sure. They will burn out, but sometimes they can also repel the color where they are. Okay, you could carry this over into the inside also, or you could put an opposite, one of your other colors from your design. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some blue, kind of a contemporary or stylized roses with this mug, just something pretty simple. So I'm going to use CC 151 cerulean blue, and you always shake. You always want to shake your colors to liquefy them. And then I'm using CC 152 deep cerulean. So a light and a dark of a color is what you're looking for. Okay, I'm going to grab some of this, and then I'll wipe. So if you get it on the bottom, just make sure you take your sponge and wipe it off. Or like I said, you could have used the Mr. Marks wax on, and you can wax the foot, which I'll probably do before I glaze it. That way I don't have to worry about anything sticking to my shelf. Okay, when I do my firing, because this is going to be fired to a cone 5-6, because it is stoneware. So now you can take either pencil, or you can take the watercolor markers, and I've talked about these many times, the Statler Tri-Plus fine liners. You can find those on Amazon or any craft store. So they have like a Sharpie point, and I'm just gonna randomly, I can either make a row of roses, or I can just kind of random. So if I divided my cup in half and then I divided it again, so now I've got 4 equal portions. So depending on how large, maybe I want 2 within that section, or I just want 1 larger one. So I'm just going to kind of make little marks to indicate. So that's one, which is like in the middle of those. And then I'm going to come down here at the bottom, and I'm going to make another one. So you've got one there, and then I'm going to go back up to the top. So I'm going up and down, in other words, and then we'll have some leaves that we'll fill in also. So this teaches you how you can randomly, and if I don't go as large as the circles that I'm making, that's okay. This marker will burn off in the kiln. Okay, so you can see. All right, it's just a guide to kind of give me placement. I'm going to use the Bavarian number 500, and it's a size 3 round. Depending on the size of your piece, you could do different size. If it's a larger, you could go larger with your round. Smaller, go smaller. So what we're going to do is we're going to put like comma strokes, and I taught this on glass in another video. This just gives you a way of seeing it on your ceramics. Okay, so it's just a series of comma strokes to create the rose. Wet your brush, blot it on the paper towel. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. Whoop, maybe not that. Okay, And okay, I've turned on the side camera so that you can see the strokes a little better. Okay, so the darker blue, this is the deep cerulean, this is cerulean, is a little bit thicker. So I'm going to add 1 drop of water to that and stir it with the handle. So when you're double loading the brush, which is what we're going to do, you need to make sure those colors are the same consistency, or you cannot load a you won't get a good load on it at all. If one's too thick, then it's harder to load. One's too thin, then everything runs. Okay, so once again, dampen your brush, blot out the moisture. I'm going to fully load with the cerulean, the 151, and I'm going to tip into the deep cerulean. Okay, and let me find a piece of paper, and I'll show you on paper what we're going to do. So in the center, you may need to tap some of that off. In the center of the flower, you're going to pull and then press down and then come off. So I'm going to pick up just a little bit more of that dark. So I'm going to press, pull, and lift. Press, pull, and lift. So occasionally go back and you can drag it and then press and lift up. So drag, press, and lift up. Come back and add that little tail. So pull it to get a tail, press, pull, and lift up. Okay, so that's what you're going to get. All right, it's going to react different on the ceramic piece, but you've kind of got the idea. So fully loading the light blue, tip in the dark. I'm going to tap it just a little bit. And since I have those guides on there, I can follow that. So tip, and of course my brush is going to be a lot larger than what my pattern was. So I'm going to just kind of ignore, press, and lift. But it does keep you kind of balanced and where you need to be going. Okay. So tip, press, pull, and lift. And as you need each color, just reload. And I'm going to constantly turn this. So tip, press, lift, retip in the dark, press, pull, and lift, reload. So tip, press, pull, and lift, reload, tip, press, pull, and lift. So it's like a big comma stroke, but it has tails on it. And because we have 2 colors, you have the variegation of those 2 colors, because the amount of pressure a brush stroke is color, pressure, and motion. So the amount of pressure will determine how large, trying to fix that tail, how large that stroke is. Okay. Alright, so I think you got the gist of that. I'm going to turn off that side camera so that you can see. So depending on how large you want it, You can keep adding. So in the middle, we're going to have just a smaller, and don't make, the other thing is, that one was centered. I'm going to make the center more up towards the top on this one. So less pressure, you get a smaller stroke. So tip, press, pull, and lift. So tip, drag it, press, pull, and lift. I'll try to hold that to the side so you can see it. Tip, press, pull, and lift. So tip, press, pull, and lift. Constantly turn, so I'm going in between each one. Constantly loading. So see how that one has it more to the center. This one's a little bit off to one side. Okay, so constantly change that direction so that it doesn't look like a stamp, in other words. So I'm going to go here and do this one more down towards the bottom. Remember, brushstroke is color. I've got two colors. Whatever the color that goes on the brush last comes off first. So that's why you have to constantly reload or retip, because that's the color that's coming off the brush first. Press, pull, lift. Press, pull, lift. Okay. Tip, drag, press, pull, and lift. So I'm going to work, because I've already reached where I wanted to be down there. So I'm going to come back and add more on this other side. So the more pressure you put down, the larger that petal will be. I'm going to add one there. Okay. So on this one, we need to go like more over to this side. Whoops. Okay. So tip, drag, press, pull, lift, and drag off. So you could do this with these, not with the background color, but with the color concentrates. You could paint on glass with it. But I did a video using the designers with the same technique. But if you only had the concentrates, you could use those on the glass. You just need to sift over them because they are a matte finish. They have no frit in them. So I'm just working until I fill that space. I get a shape that I like. Okay. Reload. Get that first color back in there. I think I'm going to go back to the middle now. Just be careful and you don't set your hand down in something that's still wet. Tip, press, pull, and lift. Tip, press, pull, and lift. I'll put one more here. Okay. 2 more to go. We're going to put this one off to the side again. Let me zoom in a little bit closer so you can see. Okay, so I'm going to tip, press, pull, and lift. Retip. Remember, the amount of pressure you put down will determine how large the stroke is. Let's see, let's start out here. Alright, we'll put one off to the center this way. Press, pull, and lift. Tip, press, pull, and lift. Constantly turn your work. Don't try to do everything with it in one position. You'll find it easier. And I generally pull my strokes towards me. That's why I'm constantly turning. Okay. rinse that out of your brush. Always blot it on the paper towel because you can tell if you have that brush clean by just rubbing it across the paper towel. Okay. All right, I'm going to use, you could keep it monochromatic, meaning all one color if you wanted, but I'm going to use 160 and 162. 160 is key lime. 162 is laurel green. And I'm using these colors straight out of the bottle. Don't need to add anything with them. Okay, so we can either use the same brush and do the leaves. Let's do it on paper, see what we like. So you can take the green, the light green, the 60, and fully load, tip into the dark, and you could press, pull, lift, retip. Remember, what goes on last comes off first, and you can do a leaf like that. We could do the square shader. I could take the number 6 Polinsky 5200. Don't forget to wet your brush. Fully load is still in the light green. Right into the brush towards me. Corner load, and I need to thin that down. Blend here on your palette, flip it over and blend. And you could do just some little wedge stroke leaves like that. I think that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so I have other videos out there on strokes, but just in case you've not seen those, let me grab a pen. So think of it in a V is what you're looking for. So your stem or would be there. So once you've loaded, then you can just corner and blend, flip over and blend. When you flip, you're putting dark next to dark. Okay, you wouldn't put it like this because then you'd have dark on both sides. Okay, so again, most of the time I push, or excuse me, pull towards myself. I put the dark where the stem is going to be, so I press down, slide, lift, and off the chisel. So press to make the width and how large you want it, and then start lifting up and come off the chisel. Okay, so press, pull, and slide. I don't have a book here. Hold this to the side so you can see it. So press, pull, and slide. So I'm not turning the brush. I'm just pressing down to get the width and then pulling to get the length, and then immediately start lifting up and pulling off to that tail. Okay. So I'm going to reload. I'm going to add a drop of water to that dark. All I did was put my handle in the water bowl and bring over a drop of water to my palette. Okay, so I'm going to, I've got the writing of the brush towards me, the dark green here, but I'm going to flip it over because I want the dark green down towards the flower. Press, pull, and slide. I'm going to just re-grab what's there in the middle. Groups of 3 are good. Okay. We can come back and add stems, vines, all of that. So all I'm doing is, once I've fully loaded with the light green and corner in the dark, I'm just grabbing each color on the, whichever corner it is. And then I'm only going to do 2 on this side. Okay. Constantly loading. If you don't constantly load, you're not going to have the same color values. Okay, so let's see. We need to have 3 or so off of this one. And I want you to take your time. There's a little bit of a curve there. You don't have to do it fast. You just want to do the stroke and do it well. So let's go off of this side and that side. And I'm going to go here, whoops, and there. I'm going to rinse and reload my brush. I'm getting a little fat with the color, and I want a crisper line. So I cleaned it, and I'm going back and fully loading in the key lime, right into the brush towards me. Corner load in the 62 Laurel, blend. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Re-corner both colors. 1, 2, 3. Reload. Let's put 1 here. I'm going to put 1 there. I'm looking at space, trying to fill this space that's available. Okay, so 1, 2. I am pushing these away from me. You could turn the mug and pull towards yourself until you get comfortable, and then as you're more comfortable you can change it up. So see, that one's smaller, less pressure. And let's put 1 there. And maybe a small one up there. Okay. Now we could have leaves on our handle if we wanted, or we could just go down the handle with some strokes. I think that's what I'll do. Okay. If you wanted to do something that it's always, this is not going to touch because you can see the raised foot, so I could put a little motif down here. And just make 3 little leaves. I got that logo I'm going really slow over so that I fill it in. And then you could sign your name down there. It's a little surprise when somebody turns it over, you know? Kind of cool. All right. So I'm going to take the 0, the 3600 0. You could do the number 2, any of your liners that you have. And what I'm going to do is just take what we have here, and I've added a little bit of water, bringing it over, and I'm going to thin that down. Add a little bit more of the lighter green. And then coat that brush. So I've added, so what we had in the middle, I've just thinned it down with water. Okay. So you could come in and pull in stems. You wouldn't have to, but you could. So stem and center vein. I don't want to forget these. Just keep thinning that color as you need it. Standing up on the tippy toes. See, I'll turn this to the side. So I'm just barely, if you put down pressure, you're going to get a fatter line. Remember, color, pressure, and motion. Doesn't matter what brush you're using, same principles apply. Color, pressure, and motion. Okay, so you can, we want to forget these. Don't forget these on the bottom. And you can add little curlicues if you want. So if you happen to have some open space, like I do here, I have to remember to slow down. It's on a curved surface, so it makes it a little harder. Doesn't have to be everywhere. So when you're doing your curlicues, you need to lift up when you make the curl. And I will show you that on paper. Whoop. Ran out of color. Okay, so what I mean by lifting up is, so when you start, you're on the tip, and if you push down, you're going to get fat, but you lift up when you come into the curl, and it's ever so slightly. You don't even really realize it, but if you'll practice that, that might help you do those easier. Okay. I do need to sign my name. I think I'll sign it with the blue. So I'm just thinning down some of that. Using that same liner. And I always date mine. Okay. Alright, let's go back to the round brush, that number 3 round. Let's put some strokes here on the handle. So I'm going to fully load with that cerulean, the 151. tip into the 152. I'm just going to make that same sort of stroke, okay? So we're going to, it's going to be hard to see because I'll try to do it on the angle. Tip, drag, press, and lift up. I needed more. So you can just kind of go back and forth. It's hard to hold it where you can see it and where I need it to be to do the stroke. Okay. You could add dots if you wanted. You could even do the roses and just add dots in your background. You wouldn't have to do leaves if you don't feel like you can do them. If you have the sumi brushes and say you don't have a round, you could take the small sumi. Let me dampen it. So the small sumi, and whoops, I don't want blue, I want green. And you could load it with the light green, tip into the dark, and you could start at the rose and just press in, pull, and lift. And you'd have a very nice leaf. If you wanted to do that double one, where you make it larger, you can just nestle them beside each other. Or if you just wanted a single, so the amount of pressure determines the size of that stroke. Okay, so you could just tip, press, pull, and lift, and you can turn it in any direction you wanted. Okay, so that's another option for a leaf, in case you don't have the brushes that I'm using. And I know a lot of you have the sumi brush, so it gives you another, I like a little bit crisper lines on mine. Now, you can come back, if you wanted to add like a little white highlight, you could use the CC 102, and we could add just with a liner brush. So we're going to use that same liner that we were just using and the white. Fully load it. And if I wanted it a little bit lighter out here on the edges, or say I just wanted a little highlight here and there, doesn't have to be a whole lot. Just some random strokes. Now remember, these are translucent underglazes, so you don't want to go real heavy with them. Multiple thin coats are better than one thick, heavy coat. Okay? So don't get too thick with them. They're too heavy, too thick, they can pop off. I got two more to do here. So just press. So I'm just making a thicker line just by adding a little bit of pressure as I'm pulling that stroke. Okay. All right, it's kind of hard to see. I think you can see it almost looks pink on the camera, but you can see those where I've added them. Okay, so then determine what you want to do for your rim. Remember, that's just the marker. The banding at the bottom. Let me get my banding wheel. I wasn't thinking ahead of time. All right. I'm going to back the camera back off. Okay, this is a wheel by Hobby Colorbia, a company I used to work for out of Italy. And we need a little bit longer liner. All right, so I've got Klinsky 5151. So these are, you can see they're about the same. They're a longer liner with a few more hairs. You can also, for the top rim, you could use a foam brush also. And do I have one of those handy? There's one. Okay, so what I'm talking about, this is a foam brush. It's kind of been pinched. So there's a piece of plastic in here. You're only going to stay on that. It's kind of like the roof of a house. It's got that wedge. So you're only going to stay up on that. You'll never lay it down on that hard surface inside because it'll end up scraping off what you're putting on. Okay. So you need just a wheel that will aid you in turning the piece. I'm going to get some water on that foam brush, and I think I'm going to trim it in the dark, the deep cerulean. So I'm just going to add that to my brush. I'm going to start the wheel moving, or Lazy Susan, whatever you've got, and just apply the same amount of pressure as you're going around. This is a little bit fatter rim. I don't want to get it on my handle, so I'm trying to be really careful there. And go around it a couple of times just to make sure you've got it on there well. Okay. Now we need to go back to the side camera so that you can see the actual band. I think you can see that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is take my liner, my long script liner, and I'm going to thin down some of the 151 cerulean by just adding some water. Load that brush up. Okay, and then I'm going to go inside this groove. So I'm going to start the wheel moving, and what I'm doing is taking my fingers and kind of walking it around the, let me see if I can see inside there. There is a wheel, so, or the shaft. So I'm just taking my fingers and walking it. Okay. All right, so let's go back to this. All right. So start the wheel, and then I'm going to touch the surface. Now I can tell this is being Stoneware. It's really super dry, so I'm going to add more water because it just grabs and then you can't get very far. So starting again, and if you press down, you're going to get a fatter line. There's lines on here that I use to kind of visually center it. If it was a piece that you can't do that, then you'll need to center it by putting it in the middle and kind of touching it, and see if you can get the same amount of space on both sides and all the way around. And then you can band with water to check to see if you're centered, and then you can move it and adjust it forward, backwards. Okay. So it depends on what you want to do in here. I could get some more dark out. Let's do it with the water first. See how. So I'm going to go above this line. So there's enough of a groove there, I think that. And sometimes if you go around it with just water first in the area, that kind of conditions it so it doesn't grab quite as bad. So I should have done that. Okay. You've got such a tiny liner, it's hard to get enough on there. And you could put one on the bottom. We'll see how well this works. Or you can turn it upside down too and do it. I'm not so sure I can do one on the inside. This is an adjustable arm. I think I'll go around it with water first. Using my other brush that I've got and just kind of, yeah, see that inside is not, there's waviness to it, so you've got it slanted and then it's straight, so that's not going to work. I thought maybe I could do that, but I'm not going to risk. So we can turn this upside down if it's more comfortable to do the other, and we can go back to our other brush, the foam brush, and I can angle it and just kind of, let's see if I can just touch that little edge. All right, we're going to make it fat. There we go. Okay, let's turn that one off. Okay, so you can see. All right. Now, you can always put some strokes inside if you wanted to. You could go back to, of course, I've thinned those colors down, so you may not want to do that. If you wanted a color inside, you could mix your 50-50 and do a mush mush, or you could go back and added the 57 jade in there. I think, I'm trying to give this a second to, I think what I'll do is put that in water and let's get, maybe I'll just do some leaves inside. That sounds like a plan. So like a vine now, because I'm going to do that where you need to blend. So, sorry. Let's get rid of that. I'm also going to blot that so I don't have water. Fully load that number 6 square shader with the key lime 160. Corner load with the 62 laurel green. Okay. So I'm going to just aim them different directions. I'm going to do that one over again. Well, I'm not doing too well here. It's the angle of the inside that makes it a little harder to do. So it really depends on the mug that you have. Like I said, this is a Stoneware piece by Mako. So just kind of look at what your inside is and whether or not you want to try this. And you hope that you come out something, and I'm not. I'm going to have some the same way. Oh well, nobody will ever look at it that close, hopefully. And then come back and thin down to make your vine or stem. And just loop them together as if they're connected. Okay. I'm not doing any black on this. I'm going to leave it just with the colors. So I look forward to seeing what you do with this technique. I think it makes a great little mug. Tell me what you think. You can put your comments below. Ask any questions. You can also message me on Facebook, and I'll be happy to help you. All the products and brushes are on the Colors for Earth website, and the links will be below the video. Okay, be sure and like and share, and that's what helps me do more of these for you. And happy painting, everyone.